On April 10th, 2010, an explosion on the Deepwater Horizon oil rig out in the Gulf of Mexico created a gusher on the seafloor that spewed oil for nearly 3 months before they could stop it. It dumped something like 4.9 million barrels of oil into the ocean, killing sea life, ruining coastal wetlands, and creating an oil slick so big that it was visible from space. On December 26, 2004, an earthquake off the west coast of Indonesia triggered a series of devastating tsunamis that killed something like 230,000 people, with waves up to 30 meters high. On April 7, 1994, the Hutu government in the nation of Rwanda initiated a genocidal campaign against the Tutsi people in their country. Over the course of 2 months, nearly 1 million Tutsis were massacred in one of the most appalling genocides of the modern era. Now, there was this Greek philosopher named Epicurus back in the 3rd century BC or so. He was one of the first thinkers seriously to wrestle with this kind of stuff, what we would call the problem of evil. His issue was trying to make sense of the idea that there is an all-loving, all-powerful God on the one hand, and on the other hand, the plain fact that evil exists in the world. Epicurus' dilemma has become famous among philosophers. Either God is willing to prevent evil, but he can't, or he's able to prevent evil and not willing to. In the first place, he couldn't be all-powerful. In the second place, he couldn't be all-loving. And if he's unable and unwilling, it couldn't be God. For millennia since Epicurus, people have been wrestling with this same basic problem. How can I believe in God when there is so much suffering in the world? Now, the authors of the Bible address the problem of evil too, but for the authors of the Bible, this is no mere philosophical question, a problem to be solved. It's an experiential question. It has to do with the incongruity between the God that they have experienced as good and loving and wise on the one hand, and their very real experience of hurt and suffering on the other. It's a matter of having experienced two obviously opposite things and knowing them to be true. So instead of asking why when it comes to evil, the authors of the Bible always ask, how long? How long till God does something about it? In one place, the psalmist asks, how long, O Lord, shall the wicked be jubilant? In another place it says, how long, O God, is the foe to scoff? Or in the book of Revelation, all those who are martyred for their faith are seen in heaven, crying out to God, O sovereign Lord, how long before you bring about justice on the earth? Now, the shift from why evil to how long may seem subtle, but for Christians, this is the only question to ask about evil. Because as Christians, we have received from God a sure promise that he will one day bring about an end to evil and restore his hurting world. He's pledged that to us in the resurrection of his Son, Jesus Christ. And to ask how long is, in one breath, to confess that we believe this with all our hearts, but in the same breath, it is to acknowledge that evil is exactly that. It's not the way things should be. To ask how long doesn't trivialize evil or make light of the brokenness, but it clings tenaciously to the promise, even in the midst of our hurt, that one day God will wipe away every tear. We believe he will. We're trusting him to do it. We only ask, how long till he does?